Hey guys, this is episode 52 of the Rugby Recap. You have myself, Rugby H, as well as the Q lads. First one, man, how you doing?
I'm doing all right, Tim. Big weekend, of course, with the Sevens, Champions Cup, and Super Rugby. This weekend, we lose two of those three. We do gain the URC back. Few differences in the lineups for Super Rugby this week, though. You were talking about your fantasy team just beforehand. You're missing a fly half. Who's it going to be that takes that spot?
I don't know. I mean, I'll have to check through the kind of different flyouts that the teams are going with. I don't know why I'm thinking about him, but I'm thinking about Harry Plummer just because, he could either have a good game or a bad game. And it's going to be a top of the table clash. So I think penalties could be decisive. So, I don't know. I'll think about it after, of course. But before we get into Super Rugby, of course, guys, and just kind of all the competitions that happened across last week, just make sure to click that like button, guys. We greatly appreciate that. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. And check out our respective channels as well. But of course, just before we get into Super B, we will kind of quickly mention the results that happened in the weekend. Firstly, starting with the Champions Cup. We had two kind of nail-biting kind of semifinals there. Both actually, I think, delivered. Again, I think the one that was more, I think like Northampton Leinster was probably the better semifinal out of the two because I think it went towards the end. It was still at the end, I'd say, in terms of deciding who would win that. But again, that Toulouse Harlequins one was a bit of a interesting one, to say the least. But what was your take on both semifinals?
Yeah, I think Harlequins to lose was probably the better one to watch overall. Like Leinster versus Northampton, the second half I think was probably the best half that we had throughout the Champions Cup, but that first half was just brutal. Like Northampton couldn't hold the ball to save themselves, and to Leinster's credit, they were able to get themselves the two tries during that kind of stage, but they should have had a lot more. And I feel like that Harlequins versus Toulouse game, because the Harlequins are known as a side that make late comebacks even when they're down, if it wasn't for a little Joe Marler slap on the back of the head, we might have seen a bit of a closer contest between those two sides as well. But I think overall, like, both second halves had quite a bit of oomph to them, like that Northampton game, everyone thought that they were down and out at halftime because of the way that they played, and then they somehow came back. And I feel like the right final in a way is now confirmed. Leinster versus Toulouse. They're the two favourites. They're the question mark of who's going to win it this time. So, I'm looking forward to it.
It'll be good. It'll be a good matchup. Again, we'll cover that a lot more in terms of, I guess, the when that kind of final comes up in the next few weeks. But again, we also did have the likes of the Singapore Sevens as well happen across the weekend. And again, New Zealand came up trumps. And they played. It's one of those where I'm not actually trying to remember now. I think they did. Did they top their group? Because I know they lost to Australia, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I don't think they were at the top of the bunch. I think that Argentina may have topped that group in the end, didn't they?
No, because I know New Zealand beat them. They beat them by some margin, wasn't it?
New Zealand beat them, but then didn't Argentina? Oh no, Argentina lost as well, didn't they?
That's what I'm saying. I think Argentina finished at the bottom of the. I could be wrong here. We have to quickly kind of look this up, guys. But
because I know it was South Africa versus Argentina for the fifth place playoff game, which did mean that they were one of the top two next qualifiers. It's a weird system that they have now that gets everyone very confused.
Exactly. I think they may have finished third if that's kind of how it worked out. But
right, I'm loading up their website, which many people complained about over the weekend. They said it's absolutely awful to try and find information on. So for the men's, apparently on their website, the men's Singapore Sevens didn't happen. So we've got the women's. Oh no, here we go. It's finally loaded. No, they don't have the men's overall. But I can tell you who won the games. In terms of the matches, I love this website.
It's an awesome website, guys. You should check it out. By the way, we're promoting the HSBC Sevens website. I would say we'll leave a link in the description, but it may not even work.
We're not doing that. So New Zealand, they won up against the Canadians in golden point time.
That's what it was, yeah.
And then in their next game, they lost to Argentina 33-5. So I actually do think Argentina were top of that group because they also were able to beat Canada in their last contest.
But what about Australia?
Australia got beaten by New Zealand.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
26 points to 10, and then Argentina beat Canada 38-0. So yeah, Argentina top of that group. Then I believe it was New Zealand, and then Australia due to
Yeah,
who's beaten who rather than
fair,
points
fair.
differential.
Yeah, because I mean, like again, you look at the other groups as well, and like I mean, the Box, of course, kind of what we predicted, kind of in a way where they win
Mm.
three, but then they just they. I mean, it was horrible to watch actually for the first like I think the first half of that game against the Australians because again they just tore the Springboks apart in that first half. But then to their credit though, they actually came back into the game and made it kind of a golden point scenario. So you don't really see
Mm.
it often in terms of that kind of a comeback. But I know that the Australians obviously got the win there, and I think the other teams did pretty well. But at the end of the day, just I was really impressed by New Zealand. I think they just they're on track to do. They're in good form going into this Olympics. That's what they want. And again, even the US, I was impressed by them actually in the group stages. But again, they let themselves down again when it came towards I think the quarterfinals. So just
Mm.
it's one of those
That
where
was to just make it more entertaining though for Great Britain and that kind of
exactly
battle of who was going
I
to
just
be
I
that
was
number eight
surprised
spot.
sadly, but fair play to Great Britain and Ireland though. I mean it's incredible to see them kind of get into these semifinals again because a lot of
Mm.
people including us to be fair like when they both came into the I think it was the Vancouver Sevens if I'm not mistaken we were like whoa that's kind of a surprising pairing to see kind of I think it was them two France and Spain, which was the four semifinalists for that one. So it's kind of cool to see that there's a bit of consistency with these teams now going forward. But again, we won't talk about it now, but there is a whole kind of dilemma now in terms of the kind of the top eight and how they're kind of separated into kind of this top eight going for the title, I guess, and then you have like the bottom eight, which are going to face off against the playoff teams to kind of stay up into the competition for the following season. But and of course, Argentina officially confirmed as the Seven Series champions as well. So congrats to them as well. Congrats. But
Vamos.
yeah, vamos indeed, vamos. But anyway, we'll move away there from the Champions Cup and the sevens, and we'll move straight into Super B. This will be a very good week of Super B. Again, I think last week we were kind of on the side of saying, okay, this is one of those weeks where you could watch it, but there's not amazing fixtures. This week, it's probably one of the best weeks we've had in a long time in terms of fixtures because I think a lot of these fixtures are very important going forward for a lot of these teams. I mean, starting off, you could say out of all the fixtures, it's probably the one that has the least severity, which is Mono Pacifica versus the Chiefs. Again, if you do look at the Chiefs side, however, they have made a lot of changes towards this side, so that could maybe make this game a bit closer than what most people would predict. But what's your take on this game? Because I know both teams going into this are kind of in different wavelength, to say the least.
Well, you mentioned about how it's not so important, but there is also that little bit of the situation of Moana Pacifica currently sit in ninth.
Yeah,
So it may not be so important for the Chiefs because they are still going to be in the top four at the end of this
yeah,
round. But for Moana Pacifica, this is almost do or die. They're at that stage of the comp that every win is absolutely crucial. They weren't able to pull it off in front of a home crowd in Tonga, which, to be fair, that was a pretty wet game
yes,
overall. But, they actually played some pretty decent rugby for the conditions that they had to deal with. The Chiefs making the change at 10, some people are a little bit concerned. Last time, though, that they had the change of McKenzie, of course, we saw Josh Jacob for the first opportunity of that young man's career. But I would say if you want someone to put in your fantasy team, put that man in. Go on, take a risk. Surely you get some bonus points for if no one
yeah,
else is picking him, right? So that could be a very
yeah,
good choice. Overall, yes, the last time that he was there, he got a lot of stick because that was one of the games that the Chiefs lost.
exactly.
But at
That's
the
what I was
same
thinking.
time, it
Yeah,
wasn't his fault. The forwards just didn't exist. So
that's true. Yeah,
overall, I think it's going to be a decent game. It's also possibly going to be one of those games. I'm going to do what I did for Moana Pacifica versus the Reds. It's one of those games that we could see 40 points difference between those two teams.
really.
Now, the reason I say that is because last time I said that, it ended up being a very close
Yeah, yeah,
game.
yeah.
So I'm
I,
trying
I know
to
where you're
do
trying
a
to go
little
with
bit
this,
of
like
the
where it's like
reverse
you want it to be a
psychology.
closer game. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, so hopefully that backfires that statement and we get a
Okay.
really good
Okay.
final
Fair.
kind of 2 or 3 minutes deciding the contest.
I like it. I like it. Again, this is one of those fixtures where, yes, I mean, to give you a bit of clarity, yes, it's not out of all the fixtures we have, it's not like the most important, but for both teams, there's still a lot going on the line because, Chiefs kind of want to maintain that top four status. And again, they're still in the fourth position there, but if they even get the third, it could even help them in terms of kind of who they meet up as an easier matchup, at least going into the playoffs. But again, for Mono Pacific's case, of course, they want to still be in contention for the playoffs, and this would be an important win to get if they want to have any chance of doing that. So, yeah, there's a lot on the line, but I think for this game, I think I just have. I want to say Mono Pacific could actually do something here because I'm just looking at this Chiefs lineup and it's just they've made a lot of changes to it. Like just so you guys know, they don't have they don't have McKenzie in this. They don't have Cortez Latimer, who was great last week. They do have Daniel Rona, who was sensational, getting a hat trick for himself. Again, Jacobson will be captaining this game for them, but I mean the back line's still good. I mean the forward pack is pretty strong, but I kind of want just Modern Pacific to kind of pull a shock here. But again, when I look at their team, they don't have like their best. I'd say their best players on the field. I don't know. I think I just have to sway towards Chiefs for this. But I'm in a similar boat to you where I'm hoping it's a closer game than what it may turn out to be. But and yeah, I assume you're going for the Chiefs as well, right?
I will say that the Chiefs get the win here, but I want it to be close.
Fair enough. But maybe then towards the next fixture, we do have the likes of the Reds versus the Rebels. This will be a very good game. Again, both teams sitting in a similar position. I think they're both, if I'm not mistaken, 5th and 6th in the table. Let me just quickly confirm that. Yeah, 5th and 6th. Reds on 27 points, Rebels on 24. And yeah, it's one of those where I think they're actually from a momentum standpoint, I think both teams are actually in two different fields. I think the Reds, from a momentum standpoint, they are in a very good place, whereas the Rebels, they've unfortunately they lost they lost both their centers actually in that game against the Blues, and again it's one of those where they just haven't been producing those kind of performances to what we saw early on in the season, kind of early midway through the season, but kind of hoping they can kind of make this an interesting game. I mean, what's your thoughts on this? Because I think both sides definitely have a chance of winning. It's not going to be like it's not going to be one-sided. But what's your take on this one?
Well, it's just if the trend of this year's Super Rugby competition continues, like we've just got into the scenario of waiting for a team's downfall. If that makes sense, like the Reds have had a couple really good weeks, so everyone's waiting for them to then go straight down to the bottom. Because that's just the trend that we've seen. Now, the Rebels, they started so well, and now they've kind of gone down a little bit. They got themselves that big win over the Highlanders. And then the next week, they got 0 points. So is this week going to be the one that they get back up and, get rearing to go into this contest and do extremely well? Maybe. Like you mentioned, they've got a few changes. But, they look like a decent side on paper. It's just whether or not I think that scrum can handle the Reds, because we did see that scrum slightly exposed in that game up against the Crusaders, and I feel like that's now something that teams are starting to target up against this Rebels side. It's in Brisbane as well. That's the other kicker. I'm gonna go the Reds, but I actually deep down I think the Rebels could do it, but it's so much safer to say the Reds in this scenario.
It is. I'm looking at this. I'm looking at both teams here, and honestly, when I look at both these teams, even off their bench, I think they're very even off the bench as well. There's not really a lot that separates a lot from these two. I mean, again, you could probably say overall, I'd probably say the Reds have the better team. But that's only because, with the additions of Tate McDermott back now, coming off the bench, that's a key one for them. They have the return of the kind of the guardian of the team, which is James O'Connor coming back into the side. So we'll see how he gets along if he does get introduced into this game. And then I believe they have what was the other one they have? Fraser McWright. Again, he was pretty good last week as well. I mean, Craigerton was pretty good for them. Tim Ryan got another 2. I mean, there's a lot of players in form here for them. It's just one of those where I look at this Rebels side. I think they can do something. I just think that they have a. I was really impressed, by the way, with the lock pairing. By the way, the Rebels. I got to say, against the Blues, I thought Anglo Smith and Josh Cannon, both of them looked really impressive, actually. And I think both of them, I actually mentioned as kind of contenders, maybe for a Wallaby spot. So they could definitely challenge that Reds lineup because I think it's one of the best in the competition, if I'm not mistaken. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But yeah, I think I am with you that it will be a home win just because the form is with them, the momentum is with them. So I kind of got about the Reds in this one, I think. Yeah, it's a safer bet as well. But hey, if the Rebels, the Revs,
Revs,
if the
you got
Rebels,
nicknames for them now.
yeah, the Revs, yeah. But if the Rebels can, get some points off this and kind of get a away win, I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised. But yeah, we're both going for the Reds in this one. Yeah, the Revs. But again, moving on towards the next game, which is probably the big clash of the round, which is Blues versus the Hurricanes, the top of the table clash, and I'm excited for this. This is going to be a great game to watch, I think. Again, both sides go into it. I mean, the Blues do have, I say, not their best team when you're looking at both sides. Like, they definitely have, out of the starting lineups, they definitely don't have their strongest one. But still, I think a lot of the players that have been put in those positions that they've performed pretty good, actually, I think. I mean, you look at...
So out of curiosity, with the exception of, I guess, saying there's no Rieko Ioane, which other positions would you say they have weak spots in that they'd normally have someone different?
Are you just saying that they're just really good?
I'm looking through at this lineup, and I don't think too many people would change too many of the players. Like, you could maybe make an argument for Eklund for Riccatelli, but I think Riccatelli's been in some pretty decent form this year.
Yeah, I would.
Aside from that, though, Akira, Dalton, and Satutu in the loose forward trio.
So this is the thing where, I mean, again, I may get a lot of stick for this, but we haven't seen Akira for a long time, and again, I just don't know what he's going to be able to produce in this game because he does have his on and off moments. I'd say on and off games, to put it more correctly. So it's one of those where he can have. It just depends how he goes. So I wouldn't mind like an Anton Segner because I thought he was pretty good last game, or even like an Adrian Cho, who's done pretty well there. Again, I know that Zoran Sullivan's back, so that's probably the big one that's been announced. But I do want to give credit towards Forbes, who's been playing in that position. That's kind of the guy I was mentioning, where I think in terms of covering that 15, he's done very well, like very well. I think I've been very impressed by him. Like, out of all the games we played, like the last 3 or 4 games, he's actually been the player I think that stood up and kind of created a lot of moments for this Blues team. So yeah, again, I think he is on the bench though for this one, if I'm not mistaken. But again, I will be excited to see Sarge Sutherland back because he is a talent and he's someone where I'm not saying he's 100% guaranteed, but if he had played, if he played a lot more minutes this year and kind of just wasn't injured, to be fair, I think he could have had a similar season towards what we've seen with Ruben Love. I honestly think like he's that kind of player, like where they're obviously they're kind of different players, I'd say. Like, I mean, Zoran Sullivan's more of like a Ruben Love finds the assist. I think that's kind of what he's known for. He's kind of more of the playmaker out of the two, whereas Zoran Sullivan's more of the try scorer. There's nothing wrong, by the way. There's 2 different ways you can go from a fullback position, but I think from a fullback, you rather have a mix of both. And I think Ruben Love obviously has shown that more this season with the time he's had and just how well the Hurricanes have played this season. So it's one of those where if Zoran Sullivan could just if he can step up in these final 4 games, again, it's all against New Zealand teams, then going into these playoffs as well, then you never know. We'll see what happens, but. Yeah.
That was an incredibly long-winded way of saying you'd take Akira Ioane out of the lineup.
Hey, there is other players. Like, I'm trying to think. Is there other players? I mean, I'm surprised. I mean, maybe he's injured to my knowledge, but Lachlan McWano as well. The lock, he's done pretty well for the Blues recently. But again, Sam Derry was impressive last week, so I'm not like going to be mad about it. But I'm surprised he's not even off the bench. So. I assume it's a rest or there's maybe some kind of injury there. I'm not sure, but again, the Hurricanes have a very good side, so it's gonna be tough. But what's your take on this one? Because I want to get your take from a neutral standpoint.
Well, I think that somewhere that the Hurricanes may struggle in this game is line-out time. I think that without Asafa Moore, we have seen like the replacements, Tupu Tupu, no offense to him, but he hasn't had a huge amount of
Yeah,
experience
yeah.
at this level. That was a bit of a struggle. The man that they brought in the week prior, I can't even remember his name. He only got a very brief amount of time
Is it Recruits
out there on the
Stones?
field.
Is it?
Or I know that they also had what's his face, the blonde fellow
Oh,
for them as
O'Reilly.
well,
Is it O'Reilly?
James O'Reilly. But then did
James
he
O'Reilly.
also get injured? Because I think they ditched him pretty quickly, and
Yeah,
then they've
I
had
thought he would
now
do well.
Kareru Symes coming back in. So,
Yeah.
ugh, that's about the noise that I make when I see that Hurricanes line out. And
Oh gosh.
like
My
that's
gosh.
the only thing in this lineup I think that
Yeah.
I would change. But then there's nothing to change it to because they don't have that option
Exactly.
as
Yeah.
a hooker. So, it is going to probably cost them, like as harsh as it sounds, I think it's going to probably cost them about maybe 14 points on the day. So they have to make sure that the rest of their game is strong. Their scrum looks about the best that it ever has at the moment for the Hurricanes. They're forcing sides back that they look even with on paper, and then they're
Yeah.
just driving straight over the top of them. And that's something that the Blues love to do, of course, with Hoskins and Tutu being
Indeed.
the leading try scorer, breaking off the back of that scrum and having a bit of a crack at the line. But yeah, I think line out time for me is definitely somewhere that the Hurricanes will have a bit of a concern in. Just trying to get around that, honestly, 70% might be like high enough. I don't think it's going to be too much higher than that. These could be
Yeah.
me completely jinxing it here, but yeah, I think that is somewhere could be a bit of a struggle.
Hmm. I think also for this game, because I'm just trying to remember what happened in that matchup earlier on in the season. I think it was round 4, if I'm not mistaken, when
Who
these
won
two
that one?
sides, the Hurricanes. But to
Did
be
they?
fair, what I remember in that game, I mean, there's only one man I can talk about. It was Kenny
Mm.
Nahalo. He was like,
Oh,
he
and
just
Riley
tore
Higgins.
he tore the Blues up. You kidding me? You're still talking about Riley Higgins? Gosh.
Throw him in there.
Yeah. You know what? Yeah. Actually, let's not talk about Naholo. Yeah. Riley Higgins was definitely the man of the match of that game. Yeah.
Mm.
But no, with Naholo though, what I was going to say though is that with the pitch being bigger at Eden Park, it's one of those where it's going to actually help the Hurricanes, in my opinion, as well, because they love getting, kind of passing the ball out towards their wingers, and they got some good set of wingers on them with Naholo and Mobley there. So it's definitely something that the Blues have to be aware of. At the same time, we got some decent wingers ourselves, with Caleb Clark and Martellez. So it's going to be a big battle in terms of those 11 and 14 positions. But yeah, it's going to come close. This is going to be a close battle. I don't see this being like a one-sided game. Again, I swear, if this is a one-sided game, like kind of what we were saying, I think with that Brumbies game 2 weeks ago, I'll be very, very surprised.
Yeah.
But what's your kind of stance on this then? Who do you think is going to get kind of come clutch in this game? Because essentially, I mean, whoever wins this game, in my opinion, I think holds that number one spot for the remainder of the year. Again, there's maybe like a few switches that could happen, because I know that the Hurricanes actually face the Chiefs away next week, so that's a pretty big battle. And I know that the Blues face the Chiefs as well, but at home. Again, the Blues also face the Crusaders away. So yes, I know people may say the Crusaders are down and out, but hey, trust me, as a Blues fan, we will always see that game as a as a game that can hurt us. So I'm more confident. Let's just say that. But what's your kind of take on this game then, in terms of who you think is going to win?
Oh, it's a hard one, isn't it? Because, like, on paper, these two sides on any given day, I believe, would beat most sides in the competition, if not all. But once again, I just look at that line out of the Hurricanes, and I know I shouldn't look at it as deeply as I have.
No, but
Maybe it's going to
it's a
go
fair point.
well.
Yeah.
But it just, compared to the rest of the lineup, no offence to Kareru Symes. Love watching him in the Bunnings NBC. We've actually called quite a few of those matches with them in it. But, it's going to be a tricky game up against the Blues. But they are underdogs, and I know you're backing the men in blue, so I'm going to back the men in yellow and say the
Oh
Hurricanes
my
pull
gosh.
off the
Oh,
victory,
there you go.
even
The
with
last
the
switch there.
wonky line out.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, yeah. You know my answer, guys. I'm definitely going the Blues for this. It's just one of those where, yeah, like it's gonna be a close game. It's gonna be a close game. I would love it if it's decided down towards a Harry Plummer penalty, because it's going to be like a 50-50 chance if he gets it. So it's going to be one of those where that would definitely be funny to watch, but also heartbreaking if it goes the wrong way. But anyway, we'll move away from this game. Moving on then towards the Highlanders versus Crusaders, which again, this is another matchup which normally you would suspect is further up the table for both these teams. But again, both these teams are actually fighting for that kind of 7th, 8th position within the playoff of this kind of the season. And yeah, I honestly, I've been looking at these fixtures for the Crusaders, and I think they have 4 fixtures left. Including this one against the Highlanders. They face the Brumbies next week, the Blues at home, and then Mar Pacifica at home. And I think they can beat Mar Pacifica at home on that final day. But I think there's a chance they could lose against the Blues and the Brumbies. So this could really, if you look at it from a mathematical standpoint, this could be the decider actually in terms of if they get in or get out. So it's a very big game in terms of from how I see it. And again, the Highlanders, when you look at their fixtures, they still have some tough games, because I know that they play the Blues, if I'm not mistaken. Well, let me just quickly check their fixtures. They have the Blues, Fiji and Druid at home, and the Hurricanes away. I mean, and this is also an important game for them because they really have to win. They're kind of in a similar boat to the Crusaders, where I can only really see them winning 2 games of this, including this one against this game. So this, honestly, I could be wrong in saying this, guys, but I think whoever wins this game will make the playoffs, and the other team won't.
Ooh,
that's a tough thing to say, but it's an early claim. Again, this could come back to haunt me, as the Crusaders could just win against the Blues. But so we'll see what happens in this one. But what's your take on this? Because I think it's going to be a good game overall to watch.
Well, I hope it is, because these two sides have shown throughout the season they've got potential. Exactly. And I know that a lot of people would look at the Crusaders and say, nah, not this year. But they still, they make it a lot of errors, but then at the same time, they're still scoring some tries that you go, oh, okay, the Crusaders are back, and then they lose. So you're like, okay, never mind. But I honestly think that this game, for me, has the potential of a fireworks encounter, but it also has the potential to, unfortunately, just be a dud and be a match that everyone's like, okay, that rivalry that was once formidable and once looked forward to flat out is now and a little bit of a fizzle, which I hope's not the case. I hope that it is the first one, because these two sides stylistically do match up quite well up against each other. There's that South Island rivalry comes into it as well, so I'd like to think there'll be a little bit more on the line, and that actually seems to be the games that the Crusaders do well in. We've got to remember they were able to get themselves to win over the Chiefs. They almost got themselves to win over the Hurricanes when they played in Christchurch. That is because of that New Zealand kind of rivalry of we want to beat other New Zealand teams. They didn't quite have that up against the Blues. They couldn't find the try line, unfortunately, for that game. But I think this one, it has the potential to be a really good game, and I just hope it is. Definitely if the Blues Hurricanes is just phenomenal first, and then we go on to this game, it's got to keep the momentum going. We've got 4 games in a row on a Saturday, and that's only the second one. Why do they do that, Tim? Why don't we get Sunday games anymore other than once every 4 or 5 weeks?
Yeah, it's weird. I think the last time there was actually a Sunday game was Highlanders, what was it? Highlanders Force, actually, I think was the last one I can remember, actually. So yeah, it's one of those where we'll see what happens. But I know that when you look at the lineups, I know that there's the big additions really towards this matchup is for the Crusaders, with Tamati Williams now back, as well as Cody Taylor, which is the big one, actually, because he's coming back from his sabbatical. So that's a big addition there for the Crusaders, and a key player for them, really, because he can really help them out in terms of that forward pack. Again, I know that for the Highlanders, however, they were pretty impressive, actually, in those conditions, like we were saying, against Mar Pacifica. I thought Jacob Ratavuki-Namkins stepped up, really. He did pretty well in that game. I thought Connor Basham was pretty good. Actually, no, Connor Gordon Basham was good. Mm-hmm. But I'm trying to think, both sides can go into this. I think I think it'll be a good game. That's kind of what I'm getting at, guys. I think it's not going to be a dud. I don't think this will be a dud. I think this will be honestly, I think both teams can get up like 20 points. Like both teams will be higher than 20 points. It'll be one of those games, I think, because there's a lot riding on this. Like it's going to be very open ended. I think that's the other way to say it, because it could come out as like where I don't know, the Highlanders are on like 26, but then the Crusaders go up to like 40, or like it's vice versa in a way, like where they may run one team may run a rave at the ends. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this, guys, because like I said, I honestly believe whoever doesn't win this one could miss out in terms of the playoffs. But but in saying that, who do you think will win then?
It's in Dunedin, isn't it? But we have seen the Highlanders struggle in Dunedin this year.
There's no point saying it's in Dunedin. Like that doesn't mean anything this year.
It's quite cold at this time of year. You know, I was down there recently. It's bloody freezing, Tim, at night time. This is going to be a nighttime game. You know, handling might be a problem, unfortunately, again. I'm going to say, once again, I'm going to go with the Crusaders. And people will start to get annoyed that I've backed them so many times when they've lost. But just looking through at this lineup, like I like the fact that they got rid of Lee Halfpenny. I felt like that didn't really add too much to the Crusaders, unfortunately. Johnny McNichol, he's still a bit of a 50-50, but they've got him at number 15 for this game, so hopefully he goes all right. And it's just a really good game. That's all we can say.
Yeah. I think I'm going to back the Highlanders for this one. I think I'm going to back them, just back the home team. Again, they've made some changes themselves, by the way. I know even de Groot is the captain for this one. They got some good players in there. I thought, Fafakatava, if he just steps up like to what he was doing last week, then he can definitely cause a bit of damage towards that Crusaders back line. But I'm looking forward to it. I really am looking forward towards that game. But again, moving away from that one, onto the final bunch of ones now. We have the Waratahs versus the Brumbies. This one is, again, there's still a lot up for stakes here, because it's similar towards that kind of Moda Pacifica Chiefs one, where one team is kind of in a position where they want to get into that playoffs and kind of give themselves a better chance going into the final games to kind of be in that position to do it. Whereas the Brumbies, however, are in a similar position to the Chiefs, where they just want to kind of maintain, well, for their case, they want to maintain third position, really, and kind of make sure the Chiefs don't kind of overtake them, because, again, it comes down towards who, we don't know right now who they could face, but it's going to be interesting to see at the end which team is facing who in the playoffs, and that third and fourth could be the difference. But again, what's your thoughts on this one? Because I think both teams have made some changes. So
well, Jack de Brenzini, of course, the starting fly half for the Brumbies. You were going to go with Noah Lolesio in your fantasy, but he is no longer in the side, unfortunately, from last week. Lena Cattell and Tamati Tua, I like that midfield combo for the Brumbies. It's just whether or not they can function well. Like I saw in that game up against the Fijian draw, there were some really good moments, but then they also got caught into that Fijian draw way of playing. It was a little bit scrappy at times, a little bit all over the place, and they can't afford to do that up against this Waratahs side, who honestly, like, they're currently on the table. I'll just get the exact points. They're currently sitting on 12.
Yeah.
But if they won this game, they would boost right up to either 9th or 8th, depending on other results.
Yeah.
So it's still, we're in this weird scenario and the weird loop of no side's really completely out of the competition yet. But if the Waratahs lose this game, I would say they're pretty close to it. Mm-hmm. So this is pretty much do or die. They have to perform here. They've got some great players. I think Jay Gordon's had a very good season so far for them overall. I mean, Tizano's been a tackling machine for so long.
Awesome.
Although they haven't actually got him in the starting lineup for this game, I don't think. I think they've decided to leave him out for... Wait, no, Tizano's Western Force.
Yeah, I was going to say, wait.
The wrong side. Both start with W. Of course, Western Force next game. Nah. No, I know a mustache when I see one. I think I just got the games mixed up, to be honest. But overall, like, their loose forward trio is still pretty strong for the Waratahs. Lockie Swinton, physical man. Up against the Brumbies, I think that's what he's going to need to do. See how I tried to save that there? I don't think it went too badly. But just the Brumbies, I think it's all going to be around how this Lonergan-de Brenzini combo works. And I think it will, but I also, you know what, we're going underdogs, Waratahs to win it. Why not? See how it goes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I've got a cold at the moment, so I don't think I'm thinking straight. So I'll just go the Waratahs.
I mean, yeah. To be fair, it's one of those games where they definitely have a chance in doing it because with Mac
Mm.
Jorgensen out, of course, Mark Narcontawasi filling into that 15 spot, and they have a decent lineup there actually. When you look at it like from man to man, like they have Dylan Peach at an 11 spot. He's been pretty good for them and for a lot of games. Alakai Foketi, Joey Walton. It's a pretty decent side. I mean, even the loose forward is really the loose forwards ones are kind of the ones that are looking strong. Even like Ferguson Warner, actually, I just noticed. He's filling in those lock positions. He's a great player. So it'll be interesting to see how he can get along in this one. But then, yeah, for the Brumbies, they just have, I mean, that back line, of course, the 10 obviously with Debrasini, but still, it's a pretty good side. That essentially a starting lineup, but in my opinion, again, yes, they have made some changes in that front row, but yeah, I think it's pretty good. And again, I was going to mention this sooner, but there was the announcement actually, I think this week that Darcy Swain will be moving towards the Western Force, following on next
Mm.
season. So that's been announced. So he'll be joining them on a 2-year deal, and it was actually kind of cool. There was a video actually that came out of I believe Len Iketal kind of just expressing his thoughts on the kind of his move, and he kind of actually got emotional actually, kind of just saying how a lot of this group is kind of is followed him because he was like the first one out of the whole area of, I think it was Queensland where actually all of them came, and then they all went to the Brumbies Academy. So like he's like the first one to do it. So it's kind of a big thing for him to be moving on. But yeah, I think he'll do pretty well at the Western Force. And I know that I haven't mentioned it yet, but Hunter Pasami did sign that contract. Rugby Australia did come in with a 2-year deal this time, and he has signed that pen. So yeah, it's good. That's good for Rugby Australia because he is definitely the inform number 12. So if you didn't have him, I'd be very worried because you don't have a lot
Mm.
of 12s besides what Volketti that can think of outside of Australia that you can really rely on. So it's good to have him at least under contract. But going into this game, I think I'm just going to say the Brumbies. I'm about the Brumbies for this. They just have a really good back line. That look at it, and yeah, they'll be pretty strong. But yeah, for that final game, of course, we do have the likes of the Western Force versus the Fijian Drua, and this is one where, similar to what you were saying with the Waratahs, I think this is one where the Western Force have to win. They have to win this if they want any shot at making the playoffs because they're in a position where they can't afford to lose any games. But again, when you look at their fixtures, they're actually, I'm not going to say that they're favorable fixtures in the way that they're not facing any more New Zealand sides where they're just facing the Fijian Drua this week, then they're facing the Waratahs at home, then the Reds away, then the Brumbies at home. So it's in their favor kind of when you look at it from a fixture standpoint. But again, they're going to take their opportunities. So we'll see what happens in this case. And again, for the Western Force, they have some good players in there. Again, it's one of those where they were kind of lackluster. That's kind of the best way I can kind of say it in that game in the week against the Chiefs. Like they had literally no response for them. They just kind of blew them away in that one, which isn't their fault because the Chiefs are just an amazing side anyway. But I mean, I would have expected a bit
Still
closer.
slightly their fault, isn't it? Like
Yeah, I mean, it is. I try to be a bit nice to them, but yeah,
Mm.
like they got to work on their defense. That's definitely a key.
Mm.
Because when you're going the likes of the Fijian Drua, you got to work on your defense because they can just break it wide open, particularly with Masi because he is just going to be Well, he's just been electrifying this season. But again, from a Fijian Drua standpoint, of course, they are in need of an away win, which we keep saying. They almost, to be fair, they to give them a bit of credit, and they deserve this credit. They actually played pretty well actually against the Brumbies, actually coming back into the game. I actually thought at one point there'd be something on here, but again, it was kind of too late for anything to happen. But still, they showed a bit of promise in that game. Going into this one, I'm hoping they can kind of produce kind of a similar performance, but at least get these tries earlier on because that's kind of what hurt them in that game. But yeah, what's your take on this one?
Well, that's where it's quite brutal, isn't it? Because, they do deserve a lot of credit for the way that they fought back. But then at the same time, they still lost by 8, so they don't even get any reward on the board for it. You don't get yourself your bonus point for being within 7, and those extra points can be absolutely crucial as we make our way further through the competition. They've gone with a strong side in this game. In fact, both sides have. Have you seen Carlo Tizzano, eh? Bit of a tackling machine. for the
Yeah,
Western
not at the
Force.
Waratahs, by the way, but for
Not
the
at the
Western Force.
Waratahs. He's now at the Force, and he's a very handy player.
Yeah,
But
he's
I
awesome.
think it's the tricky part of the season now that it is do or die, and the drawer. I want to say it, but I'm scared to say it. I feel like this is their best chance of getting an away win that they're going to
Okay.
have throughout the whole season. Only because the Force, like you said, like they just got beaten badly by the
Yes.
Chiefs
Yeah.
last week. Like that's the nice way of putting it, and that's about as nice as
Yeah.
you can put it. They were beaten badly by a Chiefs side that just dominated throughout their whole contest. But the drawer, they at least kept it close with the Brumbies. But
Mm.
if points differential isn't the thing that you're mainly caring about, which side looks at that last game in a better light, if that makes sense? Because I feel like the Force will be like, that went really badly, but now we know what we need to improve on. We know what we
Yeah.
could have done better. The draw in those last moments emptied their tanks, they emptied their hearts, and they still came up short. So what does that do to team morale, Tim? Does that break you down, or does that drive you just that little bit further
I,
to
I,
find that next gear?
I think it drives you a bit. I mean, I understand both ways you're coming from, by the way, but I think it drives you further actually, because you got to think long term as well. Because if they are to get into the playoffs anyway, they're going to have to face one of the big four. So it kind of
Mm,
shows that you have the ability to kind of pull up a performance really away. But again, you now know what you have to do in these type of games where you have to score early if you want to go in terms of these kind of the top four teams in this comp. So they can learn some lessons from this, but not in the way of like in terms of this game, but like for future games. That's kind of the way I'm putting it. But I mean, so
mm.
you are going to say Fiji Jura. Is that what your stance
Oh,
is for this
yeah.
one? Okay,
Yeah,
fair enough.
absolutely.
Fair enough. Well, I'm actually going to go with the Western Force for this one. I
Oh,
think
no.
I no, but I'll give you a reason behind this though. I think they're going to have a very this. I mean, I'm this could be completely wrong, but I have a funny feeling we could see the exact same thing in this game to what we saw with the Brumbies when they
Oh,
lost to the
no.
Blues by a lot. It was their worst
Mm,
performance, literally their worst performance of the season. And then they come back against the Hurricanes, the number one team in the comp, and just blow them away in that first half. And I have a feeling the Western Force can do the same thing in this game against the Fijian Drua. They can definitely get a performance from this. They're going to be, like you said, they've learned a lot of what not to do in that game
mm,
against, from that Chiefs game. So I don't expect them to have as many mistakes to what we saw in that one in terms of this one, and it's at home, so it's in their favor as well. They have a good side going into this, so I'm gonna bat the Western Force. So I kind of want them to kind of do a certain like kind of a go on a run here of games and make it interesting for
mm.
the final round if possible. But yeah, I'm going with Austin Force. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, look, this competition is awesome. Super Beat has been so good this year, guys. I mean, it's just great to see the Australian sides kind of just pulling off wins where you don't expect them to, and even like Fiji and Drua, like to be fair to them, they've done pretty well. I wouldn't say as well as last year because they were really good last year, in terms of the wins they got, but still they've been pretty impressive because they've got some good wins this year. But again, at home, they need that away
At
win,
home,
so
yeah.
we'll see what happens. But yeah, anyway, we'll leave it there, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Make sure to leave a like button. We'd greatly appreciate that. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Check out our respective channels, and yeah, we'll see you guys next time.